The Charlotte Ledger Podcast is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. I'm Steve Dunn. To find out more about the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. I'm joined today by Mark Gustafson, attorney and mediator with Bell, Davis & Pitt. For the past year, Mark has driven an electric vehicle, and he's written an article about it. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Steve.
What was your motivation in tracking your first year of ownership of an electric vehicle?
Always kind of thought once electric vehicles rolled out that was something that I would be interested in. I've liked cars and my family is into cars. And so when the opportunity to get one came around, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to participate in this little personal social experiment. And I think one of the things was just hearing so much about range issues and range anxiety. And I figured I'd put it to the test and kind of see what happened on the other end.
Well, it's one of the things that you hear when people are considering getting new cars and they're considering an electric car. It's an option for everybody now. One of the objections that you hear is that they don't have enough range. They don't go far enough. And so that was one of the things that you wanted to test. What was your experience in that regard?
Yeah. So when I was shopping for them, I think that's the first place you probably think about is when you're shopping for them, the more money you pay, the farther you can go. Put into the car, the bigger the battery and the more miles you can travel. And so I was kind of looking for a happy medium.
Well, let's do this. What cars did you look at? Because there's a lot of options now. And I'm a Tesla driver myself. So I've driven Teslas since 2015. And that's really all I know about. But just looking at what's available now, like I think all of the major car brands have a plug-in electric option. So which ones did you consider and what did you eventually settle on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my criteria was I wanted something reasonably priced. Early on, a lot of things were really on the high end, and I thought, hey, that doesn't really fit the market and it doesn't match, popular appeal. So something, reasonably priced. And so mine ended up around $53,000. And I wanted something with about a 250 mile range. Now I've learned about range, that range isn't always accurate. 250 miles for me was Atlanta. Now I don't think there's any way in the world I'd make it to Atlanta on one charge.
All right. I always tell people that when you're evaluating your range in an electric vehicle, you need to know that that's at sea level with no wind, one barometric pressure, ideal conditions, in other words.
Air conditioning off, speakers down, shifting it into neutral on the downhills. So, but that was my criteria, and I did kind of learn from that experience. But I was looking for something with 250 miles range. It could get to Charleston. That was a big target. Could get me to the North Carolina mountains. And then also something, we have a family of four, and something that would fit that. And then, frankly, I really wanted something that was made by one of the major manufacturers. I drove Audis for a long time and loved those. And everybody has a Tesla, and I think that they're fantastic, but I wanted something from one of the mainline General Motors, Ford. Maybe that's the American in me, but that's...
Well, I will point out that Teslas also are American cars, okay?
which is an interesting point, yeah. But, my cousin works for one of the major manufacturers, and I thought it was important to support that. And frankly, I wanted to see, we know that Tesla could be successful at this, and my hope is that other...
So what'd you end up getting?
So mine is a Ford Mach-E. It is space white. I think I have one option, and it involves the stereo system. Although I think it turns out that I don't even need that because one of the beautiful things about electric cars is how quiet they are. And so I regularly listen to my radio on 8. So not 11, but 8. And it's just a great listening experience. And I think that's really the only option I got. Oh, yeah. So mine is rear-wheel drive. That's another kind of interesting point of all of these. I'll say that it's interesting in that it's less expensive. And I think that was partly what I was trying to do is moderate the cost of it. But because of the torque of electric cars, I regularly spin the tires. I was actually on the phone yesterday, and my friend called me a redneck for spinning the tires. Not on purpose, but just to kind of get through traffic. And so that's another interesting point. So if I had to do it over again, I'd probably look at an all-wheel drive. But man, the rear-wheel drive sure is fun.
Yeah, the driving experience is remarkable. And I want to talk about that in a little bit. But I'm intrigued by your approach to charging because unlike, I think, most of us who drive electric cars, you made a decision early on that you're not going to charge at home. And I think it's an interesting way of life that you chose for yourself. I think you kind of put yourself on extra hard difficulty for reasons that I'm not sure I fully understand. Because to me, one of the great benefits of owning an electric car is that you can charge it essentially like a cell phone. Like when you go home, you can just plug it in. You don't have to plug it in every night, but you could. And it's just always ready for you when you wake up in the morning. And I wonder, why did you decide not to do that? And what did you, because I gather one of the reasons was you just kind of wanted to see what was out there, or what the infrastructure is like.
Yeah. So it's three things. So one, primarily is my wife. She didn't want a charger at our home. My cousin had one that sat out in his driveway very early on, had a Cadillac, one of the very first EVs, incredible car, but people made fun of it. And I think Cadillac sold like 63 of them. Anyway, my wife saw that charger and she said no. So that's primarily it. Number two is just hard-headedness and just not wanting to, change anything at our house. I've had an electrician come out and tell me how much it'll cost and where I could put the charger. I've actually got a charger. It's sitting in my office.
Well, and to be clear for our listeners, it's not that much, right? It's like a couple $100 to have an outlet put into your house, right?
That's it.
For most folks.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But then one of the big things here was kind of this social experiment. And, everybody talks about, oh, you can't go very far. And, oh, can you travel? And, oh, it must be such an inconvenience. I said, well, let's see. Now, disclaimer, I do have a charger. There's 6 chargers, in fact, in my office building. And so I charge it when I go to work. And that means I have to go to work. And some of us are working from home. But that has saved me a lot. But I would venture a guess that most people work at or near a electric charging station. And so while I say I'm cheating, I think that most people, if they look around, and I think that's part of what I learned, is if you take a little bit of time to kind of research these things, and by research, I mean like, open up an app that you can find chargers. And that's one of the things I talk about in the article, is just all different places that I've charged. In fact, on my way over here, I stopped at my son's school for a band concert and got a free little zap. Well, it's not free because I pay for him to go to school, but there's a free charger there. And so I get a few miles and head on over here.
I think it's a general proposition. One of the attributes of electric car ownership at this point is that you do have to plan ahead a little bit. There's a little bit of work that's required, but it's not hard. Like you say, you open up an app and you look and you see where can you plug in, and all the information is there.
And to be completely frank about range anxiety, I've had it maybe twice, and one of those times was on the coldest day of the year and the windiest day of the year when I was traveling to the North Carolina mountains when I hadn't planned at all. And yet, through that trip, I learned there's charging stations in Granite Falls, North Carolina that are free, Hickory, North Carolina that are free, Lenoir, North Carolina that are free, and the Blowing Rock City Park has 2 free charging stations in its parking deck. And none of that took any kind of rocket science investigation. I mean, it's literally drive down the road, find the charging station. Again, I'm cheap. I wanted to, try out this experiment, and all of those things were free. And that's between here and Blowing Rock. And so it does require a little bit of planning, but I also tell people, I don't know that our lives are worse off because we have to plan a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't just jump in our car and expect to go wherever, whenever we want to go. And maybe we should consider, what our plans are for the weekend. Maybe we should consider grouping together our errands. Maybe we should consider not taking that extra little in-town trip that is just unnecessary.
Well, you're articulating an aspiration that has great merit, but at the same time, I will tell you, I think it's important for people to understand that you can just jump in the car and drive. You're not sacrificing much, and you don't have to be an ecological warrior to drive one of these cars. And there's a lot of other reasons to do it. But your point is well taken, that the apps have, the one that I use is called PlugShare. Do you have that one?
I don't. I'm very low tech on this end. I use ChargePoint, and that's because Ford is on the ChargePoint network. And so it's probably the most basic out there, and that's what I've used.
Well, the reason I like PlugShare is because it has all the ChargePoint chargers, but it also has all the rest of the chargers, and you can filter by your connection type, your fast or slow. So a lot of times, as a Tesla driver, my first choice by far is Tesla superchargers, because they are way faster than any other option that I've run into. But in a pinch, there are a lot of other options, as you note. I would say, I think it's accurate to say that, or almost all new parking decks have electric car chargers in them. I would say all or almost all new hotels have electric car
There's
charging.
a Bank of America on, I guess it's King Street over by the Metropolitan, and they just put a bunch of Charge America chargers in their parking lot because I think there's a whole lot of parking lot space that's just going unused. I mean, if you pull up in the ChargePoint app, I think the first time I looked at it, there's an apartment complex just down the street from us over by Montford where there's 16 chargers in that parking deck. And I think you make a really good point that, gosh, you really can just jump in the car and go. I mean, we jump in the car and push the button, and it just goes. And, you know, I know a lot of cars have kind of the self-starting technology, but, you know, I can cool my car before I go. I can roll the windows down before I go.
So you point out something. These cars are very high tech, right? They all, or most of them, the ones that I know about, like feature a lot of built-in technology, and a lot of stuff is controlled through a computer screen. Tesla gets knocked a lot by people who think that it's important to press buttons instead of touch a screen. And, you know, my reaction to that is, well, we thought the same thing about iPhones versus Blackberries. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting point. And Ford, I think, is in an interesting spot because they've got to bring people along, you know, and so Ford still has some dials in it. It has a massive touch screen, and that's one of the really attractive parts about it, but it still has dials. And one of the things I tell people is my car at night is hooked up to my wireless internet at home. And so if there's a software upgrade, I don't even know about it. You know?
Well, that's the beauty, is that there are software upgrades. That's another thing. It's a little bit unusual. I guess, I don't know, maybe all cars are this way now, but certainly it was new for me when I got my first Tesla that I'd wake up in the morning and the car could do stuff that it couldn't do before. Tesla's well known for being innovative in terms of self-driving technology, and the autopilot feature, I didn't have it when I bought my first Tesla, and then I woke up in the morning one day and I did. And that, I mean, it's an incredible experience to have, you know, added functionality with the car.
The place I first recognized it is I got in my car and I had better range. And so they're improving, and I expect them to continue to improve the performance of the car through technology. You know, it's a, you know, very, very simple electric motor. I mean, it's very much a vacuum cleaner motor, and they can make different adjustments to it. And I think they're going to continue to do that. And I think that's a real neat thing. So the technology is really a cool component of the car. This is an interesting point. I got an email the other day that said I'd hit my anniversary. And that's a little bit of what spawned me to write this article. And it said I was due for a service. And I'm like, oh, you know, what's this service? And it says, and oh, by the way, I got this notification within, I say got an email, but I think that was a notification through the app. Ford has a great app, and it'll tell me when the doors are locked, when the doors are unlocked, all kinds of, you know, when I'm low on washer fluid. But the 10,000 mile service was to rotate the tires. And that's it.
There's only one fluid in my car, and it's washer fluid for the windshield. That's it.
I'm still yet to replace my windshield washer fluid. And, you know, that's it. And I think people, you know, are blown away by that. They'll ask about other things. I mean, that's one of the technologies. They all have regenerative braking, where they are, you know, replenishing the batteries through the braking systems. You know, they don't have brake pads that go bad.
Right. So what you're referring to is electric cars. There's a little bit of a driving style that you have to get used to. First thing you have to get used to is that they're all blindingly fast. Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, really all of them. Even I haven't driven a ton, but they all have the same technology, and they're all extremely fast. And even a Nissan Leaf, which is like the slowest, smallest, you know, electric car that I can think of, is pretty quick. Yeah. And so you have to get used to that, but it's very easy to get used to that because it's delightful. It's you don't need to be a speed demon or want to be a race car driver in order to appreciate the fact that you can pull out in traffic with confidence all the time. You never have to worry about,
like, an on-ramp. It's an amazing, just pulling on an on-ramp, and just, you know, it's that slow, smooth acceleration, you know. And for example, my car goes to 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds.
Yeah, it's slow and smooth acceleration, or it's fast and exhilarating acceleration, whichever you prefer. But all electric cars, just by nature, they don't have a transmission. There's just one gear, if you will. It's like driving a golf cart or a radio controlled car. It's a battery powered car.
Yeah, I mean, they're essentially all the same motors, and I mean, and when we say they go fast, I mean, they can go from 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds and then 60 to 120 in the exact same speed because there is no gear. There is no hesitation. There is no, lag. It is it's almost painful for me now to drive my wife's Toyota Highlander. I shouldn't say it almost. It is painful. Like, it's just a different driving experience, and it is not as comfortable. It is certainly not as quiet. I mean, when I'm in my wife's car, I'm cranking the stereo to 23 or 25 just so I can hear it. The road noise is incredible. And then getting back to the technology, mine creates internal road noise. So I can put it on a different mode where it's not generating any internal noise. It has kind of a intermediate mode, which you drive around in most of the time, which has a little bit of an engine sound. And then when you put it in the full-on range, you hear it almost sounds like a old Ford Mustang that we knew from high school and a GT that made all this noise. And
well, I'm a little bit against that. I have to say, I think that if you're going to drive an electric car, you should just embrace what it is. You know what I mean? And the silence of it is what it is. When
you flip that on, it's amazing. That's when you get the full experience. I mean, I agree with you that the silence is part of the beauty and that it is just an adjustment to it. But once you get into it, it's a peaceful experience. And, talking about examples of using it, I went to Winston-Salem. I guess that's 80-ish miles from Charlotte and back. No problems whatsoever on my range. As I'm driving up there in the morning, I'm kind of texting and, legal disclaimers, don't do that, and answering emails and talking on the phone. And they have those little rumble strips. And as I'm driving, I keep rolling into those rumble strips. Well, on the way home, I was like, well, I have an answer to that. I've got an autopilot where mine self-drives, changes lanes. And I wouldn't stick it in that for long periods of time. But what it does do is we all done it where you kind of get distracted and you roll into those rumble strips or you roll into another lane and someone honks at you. And the beauty of this, and I know a lot of, gas, internal combustion engine cars have this too, but that kind of coupled with the quiet, all the technology that goes with that is just a great experience. And it's, part of the things we've talked about is just, are they safe? And my car just feels incredibly safe.
One of the things that I think people may not be aware of is that Teslas in particular are among the safest cars in the world in a crash. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is the way that they're made, the way the frames are designed and built. They're incredibly safe in the event of a collision. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you don't have 20 gallons of gasoline or a whole bunch of other engine parts that are sitting in front or behind you or under you. What you've got, it's funny, I think there's this perception that electric cars catch on fire a lot or something. But like, just to be clear, like normal cars catch on fire 1,000 times more often than electric cars, right?
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about what's combustible, you got gas, you have ordinary batteries, tires, and crazy flammable. And I think, you and I should back up and say, hey, look, we're not crazy environmentalists. I mean, I haven't chained myself to a tree or glued my feet to the tennis court. I think we are environmentally conscious. I won't necessarily speak for you, but
I bought a Tesla Model S in 2015, and a lot of people asked me if this was some kind of environmental statement, and the answer was no. The car that I had before that, all of the cars that I had before that were gas guzzlers for sure. The first car I bought out of law school was a Chevy Impala SS with a modified exhaust system and a flash chip. I'm just a car-loving guy. I just like interesting cars. And I got that Tesla just because it was awesome, just because it was really fast and it was high tech, and that was it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not environmental at all, but the fact that it saves on gas and I don't have to get gas is a wonderful perk. I'm perfectly happy about it.
It is. And I couldn't technically tell you what the environmental benefit is. I mean, my hope is that it is good. And I think from an environmental perspective, I think mine's going to last forever. I know the batteries kind of diminish and the engines may change. But one of the biggest environmental, my cousin and I, who's in NASCAR, and we talk about this, is that one of the biggest environmental issues with cars is the disposal of them. And that if we change in and out of cars frequently, like we're generating all this byproduct that's just not good. And I think one of the beauties of electric cars is I think the lifespan is great. And then, getting back to the energy consumption part, at some point, the hope I think is that we close this loop where I've got, charging panels on my roof and that charges my car. And I know like the Ford F-150 Lightning, I think you can use that car as a battery. And so at some point, either whether it's air or solar or whatever, we're charging our own cars. And so there's a chance. And, then, I think my savings last year was $1,400. I figured that out, that I did 10,000 miles at, 20-ish miles per gallon and $3.50 per gallon. I think it was 1,400 miles. And my article, what I read about is that I paid, I think it was $36 for a year to charge my car.
I figured out at one time that the cost to charge the car from 0 to 100% was around $2 or so, something like that. So it's not zero cost, right? But you decided to be as efficient as you possibly could. You're very fortunate in that you have a free charging station at work. But I think this is an important point. A lot of these charging stations that we're talking about that are just out there in the world, a lot of them are free.
Yeah.
Some of them you have to pay for, but a lot of these, if you're at a hotel or if you're in a shopping center or at any kind of a destination place, they're kind of like an amenity that places are installing to kind of draw people in.
No, I think that I think it's going to be I think that's why that Bank of America I was talking about put them out front. Anything that's going to attract people's eyes and their cars. I drove down to Sunset Beach, and a real estate agent down there has a charger out front. And so I drove into town, plugged it up, went to bed, walked back down the street, and there it was.
Let me ask you this, though, and this is a question that I really don't know the answer to. As a Tesla driver, I'm extremely familiar with Tesla superchargers, and they're super fast. And you can go on a road trip and stop, and you can stop between 10 and 20 minutes every couple hours. You stop for 10 to 20 minutes, and you're good, and you're on your way. Sometimes it takes longer if you want to charge up to 100%. Sometimes it takes longer if you're down to 1%, right? But in general, if you plan ahead at all, and the onboard computer on the car will do this for you. If you put in your destination, it'll tell you, stop at this place, charge for 10 minutes, stop at the next place and charge for 15 minutes or whatever. I'm not aware that there is any other charging network that has that kind of fast charging.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I haven't used a fast charger that I recall. So most of the time I'm charging, it's adding 20 to 25 miles per hour. And so that's why my office
okay.
works.
So these Tesla superchargers can be over 1,000 miles per hour. And it depends on what your charge state is, how good the charger is. It depends on a lot of how old your car is, right? The newer cars charge a lot faster than the older cars. But ballpark, 300 to 500 miles per hour is normal.
Yeah. And, so to be clear too, so I think that my car, given its range, that, we've made the choice that we're going to have a, internal combustion engine car. So our kids are of the age where we go to Disney World. So if you're going to drive to Orlando, to me, it probably is too much work because you're always trying to get to, that happy place as quick as you can.
I don't think you can realistically do a family road trip unless you're using the Tesla supercharger network, or which I understand is opening up to other brands of cars now. Or
Ford's going to be one of those. So Ford's going to jump on the Tesla supercharger station, and then maybe that will change. And then maybe it gets back to that point I was making earlier that, hey, when we go on these road trips, maybe we shouldn't be trying to gun it from A to B, and that there is a little bit of stuff in between. Oh, by the way, when you drive from Charlotte to Orlando, you hit Columbia, you hit Savannah, you hit Jacksonville. And there might possibly be, and I'm being sarcastic, obviously, that some neat things to see in those places, and that maybe we shouldn't be so focused. But then the other end, I heard Elon Musk talking the other day when you get to the self-driving thing, I mean, is there a chance that we get in our cars in Charlotte at some point and go to sleep and we wake up in Orlando or wake up in Jacksonville?
I think we'll see that in our lifetimes for sure. I think how we always overestimate how technology is going to progress in the next year, but we underestimate how much it's going to progress in the next 10 years. I think we've kind of been on the cusp of real self-driving for a while, but never quite there for a long time. And eventually that problem will be solved. Right now, I love Teslas, but they're full self-driving. I've used it myself, and I don't find it useful I wouldn't pay for it. I don't find it useful in real life, but it is useful if you want to check your phone real quick. If you get a text message and you want to take a look at it, you just click on the car to drive by itself and look at your phone. It's safe in that way.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that road trips, in honesty, road trips can be the problem. But again, getting back to why I decided on this car, I went back and I kind of looked and then kind of thought about like our family's road trips. And, if you think about, the vast majority of our trips, they're within that 10, 15 mile range. I mean, I bet the vast majority is within 3 miles.
No, absolutely. 99% of the time you're in town, you're just driving around town.
Yep.
And you don't have to think about range at all.
No,
I think when you talk about traveling over the road, city to city, road trip kind of situation, my impression is that Tesla is still your best bet there. If you want to use it for that reason, it's very doable. Now, do you have to? Are you going to get there as fast as you would if you got in the car and barreled down the highway and told the kids they can't go to the bathroom? No, you're not. You're going to stop every 2 to 3 hours for half an hour or so, and it's a relaxing way to travel. And having gotten used to it over these recent years, I've found it an enjoyable way to travel. I don't think I could do. If I didn't have the Tesla supercharger network, I would not use an electric car for a road trip at all, because I'm not going to stop and plug in for like 8 hours and just wait around,
Yeah, and I think it is just one of the best things I can tell people is I'm yet to meet someone who started driving an EV and stopped. Like I haven't met that person. And we all switch in and out of all kinds of cars. I used to drive a big SUV. I kind of got over it. I started driving sedans. I got to a point I wanted mini station wagons. Like, I think once you go into an EV, like there is no going back from this. I looked at a Rivian, there was a Rivian in our parking deck using the free chargers. And I said, maybe when my family gets of that size and of that station in life, that's where I'll go. The Ford Lightning looks incredible to me. I think there's going to be different options. And again, that's part of what my social experiment was that, I want to use something, I look at all of these things on a continuum that, we got to get the cars going. Ford is losing massive amounts of money on these cars. They've now dropped the price, like $15,000 in the last couple of years, and part of that's to keep up with Tesla. But we got to get them out there. We got to get people using them. We got to get, I'm a normal dude. I think you're a relatively normal dude, and we're driving these EVs all over the place and having a great time. And I want there to be more options. I want there to be SUVs, and I want there to be sports cars, and I want there to be mini wagons. And when we get there and then we add the technology and we're charging them off of our solar panels, then to me, that network seems to be just, a really good spot to be. And oh, by the way, they're really freaking fun.
Yeah, well, that's the key. And for that reason, I think that the market takes care of it on its own. Like you say, I mean, once you've had one, it's very difficult to imagine going back in that way. There's a couple of things that I think. One is, I am a car lover. I get emails about 63 Corvettes on bringatrailer.com. I get notified. I look at pictures of cars. I since I was a little boy, I've loved cars. And every now and then I think, I'd like to buy a 63 Corvette. But one of the things that holds me back is just thinking, like, am I really going to do that? Am I really going to put this thing in my garage where it's going to be like dripping on the ground, and like I'm going to have to put gas in it and do, and I also notice sometimes when I'm driving around town, just sitting at a red light or something, you just look at all the tailpipes around you and they're all just literally shooting like smoke out into the air around you. It just feels like the past.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's it. It does. It feels like the past.
You and I are dorking out in this conversation, like, talking. I don't know. I think if I were an EV skeptic or an outright anti-EV person, which is a thing, as you know, that actually exists, I would probably be listening to this and find it very annoying and think that we're evangelizing in some way. But to be clear, like, I think the issue of market penetration of electric vehicles takes care of itself simply, but you don't have to sell them. They sell themselves.
No, and I think that's part of like why I wrote this article was that, that I don't have any goal. I don't have any mission. I don't do crazy things. Like, again, it is fun. It makes sense for me. I think it makes sense for others. I haven't met a person that didn't get in my car and marvel at the screen or how quiet it is or how it goes from 0 to 60 so quickly. And I think that's right. I mean, it takes time for people to kind of adopt these things, and they're going to, and they get better all the time. Yeah.
Well, that's a great place to leave it. Mark, thank you for being my guest on the Charlotte Ledger podcast.
Happy to be here, Steve. Enjoyed it.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening. This episode was produced by Lindsey Banks. You can find out more about the Charlotte Ledger by visiting thecharlotteledger.com.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.